The T-72 is one of the most loved and most hated tanks I have probably ever seen. Some people say it's a
lean, mean killing machine.
And some people say it's a piece of crap death trap. But regardless of your opinion, the history of the T-72 is quite interesting. And besides, from what I could find on the Wikipedia page about this tank, there's a lot more to the history of this tank than you might know about. For example, as you might have seen in the thumbnail, it has a lot to do with the T-62 tank, or at least a better version of the T-62. Regardless, hello and welcome and enjoy this video. The T-72 is a mobilization model of a sword and had a slightly worse performance than the later models of the T-64 tank series. The main reason why the T-72 is part of this category is because while it was in service in the Red Army, it served as the primary tank model for motorized infantry units and other mainline army units. The T-64 and T-80 on the other hand were mostly supplied to guards units. The T-72 was less sophisticated than the later models of the T-64, such as the T-64B for example, and that was even though it wasn't intended to be. Interestingly, the original T-72 was better than the T-64A in some technical aspects, just like how being slightly less dumb than a rock is technically an improvement. The T-72's predecessor is the Object 167M, which some people designate as the nimble T-62. Probably because it had a very similar design to the T-62 as we can see in this comparison. One of the most obvious differences is the fact that the Object 167M featured an AZ autoloader, which can be seen in the T-72 and the T-90 today. Besides that, the Object 167M had composite armor for the upper glasses and the turret, a 125mm D81T cannon, a V26 engine which brought 700 horsepower, therefore also a stronger transmission to deal with the increased power, hydraulically powered gear shifting systems, the new Liveni 2-plane stabilization, and a new suspension with 6 road wheels and 3 return rollers. This tank was basically the Soviet Union's version of a mid-tier YouTuber with too many gadgets and not enough subscribers. All that was quite promising, but it didn't enter mass production. Reason for that was firstly because the Council of Ministers of the USSR had already ordered the T-64 to be mass produced, and the Object 167M had some other problems of its own. The Scientific Technical Council did give it a chance though, and examined the Object 167M but rejected it. This marked the end for the Object 167M, but nevertheless it left a mark on Soviet tank design. On the 50th anniversary of the October Revolution, Zverev, who was the Minister of Defense Industry, visited the experimental workshop of the UVZ factory. The design bureau chief, Leonid Kartsev, invited the minister to look at a modified T-62 with a 125mm gun. Once there, the minister wanted to see a demonstration of the tank. The designer and researcher of this tank started it up and showed him the autoloader. The minister was impressed by the autoloader and liked the idea of putting it in the T-64, but he rejected Kartsev's proposal to also replace the 5TDF engine on the T-64A in favor of a supercharged derivative of the V2 engine from the T-34. Probably because change is hard and ministers are even harder. Despite the initial rejection, the minister agreed on changing the engine one day later after a private meeting with the head of the Military Industrial Commission. Must have been one hell of a convincing PowerPoint presentation. Therefore, they agreed on modifying 6 T-64A tanks as specified by Kartsev. On 5th of January 1969, the modernization of the T-64A officially began, and this was basically the birth of the T-72. The first modified tank was the Object 172 and was completed in the summer of 1968. The second one was completed the same year. The Object 172 had a redesigned fighting compartment in order to fit the new autoloader. The engine compartment was completely changed as well in order to fit the new V45K engine and the cooling system, which was similar to the one used in the T-54. The changes were mostly on the inside of the tank and very little from the outside. Therefore, it's very hard to distinguish the Object 172 from a normal T-64A model 1989, from the front at least, but from the rear it was pretty clear that the turret was changed. This change was made for the autoloader's ramming and ejection system. The engine deck was also clearly different from that of a normal T-64A. It needed space for the new powertrain and cooling system and was therefore longer, like the list of your life's regrets. Another difference was the exhaust port. On the typical T-64, the exhaust port is located at the rear, but on the Object 172, it was located on the left side of the hull, just like on the T-54 and T-62. From my understanding, there was another modification of the Object 172, which was the Object 172M. This modification was based on the chassis of Object 167, which we talked about before. In case your dementia brain forgot, it's basically the T-62 with the AZ autoloader. It had rubberized road wheels of larger diameter and more durable tracks with open metal track pins, similar to those of the T-62 tank. Because if you're going to roll into hell, you might as well do it with style and better traction. The engine power was upgraded from 700 horsepower to 780 horsepower. They also used a two-stage air cleaning cassette system, which was also similar to the one on the T-62. The weight increased to 41 tons, but the mobility was as good as before because of the extra 80 horsepower from the engine. From November 1970 to April 1971, the Object 172M went through a full cycle of factory tests and passed. On the 6th of May 1971, it was presented to the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Defense Industry to show them what they were blowing their budgets on. Later, by the beginning of summer, a test track with 15 vehicles was set up together with the T-64A and T-80 tanks. These tanks together went through probably one of the most brutal and hardest testings I have ever heard of. A battalion of 3 companies with tank platoons was formed. Each company was formed from tanks of the same type. Now get this, together they went on a road trip going from Dnipropetrovsk through Ukraine to Belorussia to Slutsk, and then back to Dnipropetrovsk, and then through the Donbass and to the North Caucasus to Baku, across the sea by ferry to Krasnovodsk, through the Karakum Desert and the Kopetak mountain range. All of this in a damn tank. I cannot even imagine what kind of back pain the driver must have had sitting inside his tank during this time. I mean, the commander and the gunner can at least sit on their open hatches. Anyways, throughout this long march, they also did live fire tests at several shooting ranges. On a platoon and company level, they also did some exercises with live firing and maneuvering at various training grounds. After the tests, a report was created. This report included the following remarks about the Object 172's performance. I'm just going to read to you what's written in there. Tanks have passed the tests, but the lifespan of the tracks 4,500 to 5,000 kilometers is insufficient and does not fulfill the requirements for tank traveling capability of a distance of 6,500 to 7,000 kilometers without replacement of tracks. Tank 172M warranty period 3,000 kilometers and engine V46 worked reliably. In the course of further testing up to 10,000 to 11,000 kilometers, most of the units and assemblies, including the V46 engine, operated reliably, but a number of major units and assemblies showed insufficient lifespan and reliability. The tank is recommended for adoption into the armed services and serial production, provided that the identified shortcomings are eliminated and the effectiveness of their elimination is checked before serial production. The scope and timeframes for improvements and inspections should be agreed between the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Defense Industry. On August 7, 1973, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the Council of Ministers of the USSR finally adopted the Object 172M in the Soviet Army under the name of T-72 Ural. The official order was published on August 13 the same year. Following, a small batch of 30 tanks were produced at the Ural Vagonzavod factory. And that is how the T-72 was born. It's basically a mix of the T-64A and a strongly modified T-62. Anyways, that was all I had to say for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you think I said anything that is not right or you think I should have added any additional information to this video, please let me know in the comments and share your knowledge. Besides that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.
We've been hit.